I
And
actually don't know. Where were you born?
Guyanas,
Okay, in Guayana.
Guyanas, which is
French?
English speaking in South America. I immigrated to Canada when I was a teenager. There's a big difference when you go to first world country, a lot of materialistic environment. You notice that people are not as friendly. They're not as sweethearted. So I noticed that when I was a teenager. So I think I was looking all the time, like, what's the purpose of life? I always inquired in my life about, you know, where the ants come from, where the animals come from. And in the 60s, and which was my teenage years, late 60s, 69, I was 19. You know, the Beatles were influencing the songs about peace and justice, social justice. So I was part of that young people youth movement of the 60s, for sure. We didn't really know what we were looking for, but we were frustrated with suburban life. You work all day, come home, parents not happy, usually having drinks of alcohol and, you know, no real happiness, but a kind of a vapid, conscious lifestyle. So Srila Prabhupada once said to us when we were preaching, he said, the hippies are our best customers, because I was very detached from my family. I was experimented with psychotropic drugs, you know, ganja and so on. And we were trying to find some kind of moksha. You know, the dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So America, Canada, they went through dharma, then artha, then kam, no happiness. So a lot of people in these countries where there's a lot of material facility for sense enjoyment, they get frustrated and looking for moksha or some kind of liberation, internal liberation, and some answers. We were looking for answers. Most of us were experimenting with yoga, meditation. Bogus yogis were advertising and marketing all over North America. So we would visit different yogis, but then we met devotees. We'd meet devotees in the streets, and they had a beautiful persona, beautiful glow, and we all the same age. We're all the same age. So I was very impacted by these devotees. Like Mahatma Prabhu is my president in Canada.
In Canada, okay.
Actually, before I even met Mahatma, I went to some big music festivals in America, Woodstock, and I got prasadam from devotees.
Uh-huh.
And people like, famous people like Bob Dylan and many people had been in interface or had been in contact with devotees like Bob Dylan.
Uh-huh.
So this was all part of the whole movement, was the Hare Krishnas. They would do all the rock festivals.
Mm-hmm.
We get prasadam. So I was getting purified, and I was chanting Hare Krishna on my own before meeting, going to the temple or anything.
Entonces, yo iba a muchos conciertos de rock. En aquellos días los devotos iban a distribuir prasadam a grandes conciertos como Woodstock, y era parte del ambiente de esa época que los rockeros, los que estaban cantando, tales como Bob Dylan, estaban en contacto con los devotos. Entonces yo ya había tomado mucho prasadam antes de encontrarme con los devotos así directamente en la prédica, e incluso estaba cantando Hare Krishna.
So wherever I went, music festivals, all these groups, they always have prasadam. And then I'd meet devotees in Toronto. In the street, they'd sell me back to Godhead. I never understood it. But there were many famous books that we were reading. So anyway, gradually I was chanting. Like I would go in the park and I'd chant for hours. Then eventually somehow I ended up at the temple, and all devotees were so blissful. And I joined like that.
In Toronto? Huh?
In Vancouver, which is west coast, north of Seattle and California.
Yeah.
Big hippie place. It was a big hippie town because during the Vietnam War, all the young people were going to Canada.
To escape.
They didn't want to fight. So when I joined the temple, Mahatma, he's American. About, I don't know, 20 to 50% were American devotees who joined. So we go on Sankirtan every day. But when I met Prabhupada in Portland, Oregon, we went to meet Prabhupada 72 June. He looked at us, he was very, very grave, and he said, Harinam Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma. Distributing my books is also most important Sankirtan. He said this is Brihat Madanga, and his Guru Maharaj really emphasized on book distribution. And that time, everyone just doing Harinam, all day Harinam, BTG, Bhakti Godhead, but no big books. So Prabhupada was very serious, and we got that message. Around 72, we started how to distribute Prabhupada big books,
Wow.
Krishna book, Bhagavad Gita. Impossible, we thought, such a big book in the street,
So you were part of that.
Yeah, the
beginning,
wave,
eh?
the
Wow.
wave, yeah.
That was a historic moment, in the Sankirtan movement in the West.
Oh, yeah. So by December, we discovered Christmas. We started noticing people are shopping, and we go, and we'd always carry a few big books. The person who really opened up started the revolution was Tripurari Maharaj now. He was Bhakta Tom. He was on the West Coast in Santa Cruz, near San Francisco. And he just learned, he started trying big books. And then he thought, I'll try the airport. So he was disguised. He would wear a wig and suit, like a suit. He wouldn't wear blue jeans, but he wore a suit, and he'd go in there, the bathrooms. So when men were coming out of the bathroom, he'd show them a book, and he was expert. So it just opened up, like back to Tom. He was doing like 30 Bhagavatams, 30 Gitas every day. That was a lot in those days. So then we lined up behind him, and he started teaching us, and showing us the way how to sell these books. So that's how it exploded in December 72. There is also a devotee in San Francisco. His name is Keshava. And his brother was Karandar. And they were special op military. They were like the Rangers, special ops in Vietnam. So he's like a real Kshatriya, but he started going door to door with the Krishna books, beautiful Krishna books. And wow, people were just buying them, So San Francisco, of course, big hippie kind of city, very revolutionary. We call alternative city. So he also became, Prabhupada became very happy that Keshava Prabhu was doing door to door and distributing Krishna books, sometimes like 30, 40 in a day.
How much they weigh? That was like a kilo.
A kilo.
Karandara Prabhu, he became some kind of GBC or something, no?
Karandar was expert in management, very good manager. So he was GBC in the West Coast, California, and in charge of Los Angeles. And he had very good expertise, very good in organization. He was very serious guy.
They were Americans, right?
Yeah, they're both Americans, Keshav, and they were in the Vietnam War, special forces. So they had a lot of training. And that training was dovetailed into like organizing, mobilizing, organizing. Very expert, and he just raised to the GBC level.
There is a very famous letter, right, that Prabhupada wrote to Karandara, and which he says that we have to train devotees to be independently thoughtful and expert in all aspects of
all aspects.
Knowledge. Yeah, it's very famous.
Yeah, so that's how I joined, and for us, we were warriors, we were revolutionaries. It was more like, because I used to read books by Che Guevara, and I also was approached by communist people in Canada. They have communism, America, On the campuses, especially in the U.S., they had so many guys dressed like Che Guevara.
Wow.
And they were like communism, and they, America's killing all their youth. Like every day on the news, dead bodies
From
coming,
Vietnam,
and they would really focus on it. The media, very unpopular war, and young people growing up in a suburbia, wealthy family, sitting by the swimming pool, having French fries and Coke. And then they get a letter. Oh, you have to go to war.
Yeah.
And they just drop them in this jungle, and people are shooting at them. It was a big shock. Prabhupada said they weren't trained as Kshatriyas. They were Sudra. Prabhupada said that. So this was a situation, a lot of angry young people, especially angry young men, because at that time more men were going, young men were going. So the environment was very fertile for people becoming devotees, very fertile. And Krishna dropped Prabhupada right in the middle, 1965, like the peak of anti-war sentiment, civil rights movement for black people. Everything was going this way, a very radical time, rebellious, young rebellion, against capitalism, against materialism. Prabhupada came into it, just descended into New York, the Bowery. All these young people were there, kind of like myself. I didn't want to work in a regular job, so I would do things like selling art, hanging out with artists and musicians, and somehow just living within this kind of community of revolutionaries. So then Prabhupada trained us how to preach, made the intellectual class of man to introduce the Krishna conscious worldview.
Entonces Prabhupada nos entrenó a cómo presentar la perspectiva de la conciencia de Krishna.
So our worldview basically is that God is the original engineer, the original designer, and the creator of all species. And we are given knowledge from within. So our faith is by experience. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavicham Idam Uttamam Prakshaksha, like from experiencing from within, Super Soul is giving us these realizations, how the universe is created. So Prabhupada, the first time I went a morning walk with Prabhupada, scientists, rascals. For example, in Harvard and MIT, which are the supreme educational places in the world, Oxford and Harvard, they actually call themselves, the professors call themselves the Boston Brahmins.
Really?
Yeah, they call themselves Boston Brahmins.
They get the Brahmins from
They
India.
stole it. They stole the idea from India.
Brahmins, Boston Brahmins?
They call Boston, Boston, USA.
Yeah.
So they call themselves Boston Brahmins. So a lot of these guys in these universities are being glorified as the great intellectuals that they know. They're called knowledge elite, the elite of knowledge people. And they're very atheistic, of course. And basically their philosophy is, it's called empiricism. We can reduce all reality down to the basic building blocks. So there's nothing more than that in reality. So life came from the bottom up. The Vaishnavas say life came from the top down, handed down to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma gave the knowledge to Vedavyasa, Narada Muni, Vedavyasa. So this idea of empiricism is very constricted. It's very restricted to matter and the laws of physics. So the intellectuals started introducing that there's no God. So then they needed some kind of a technology to explain how all the species came into being. This is called epistemology, or the foundation of what we think we know and the technique for what we think we know and what its constraints are. So their epistemology, the foundation of what they think they know, is basically matter and physics. So, of course, the speculation has been stamped as authorized. They stamped this idea of Big Bang, So there is an explosion, then the universe cooled down, and 3.8 billion years ago, life started to show up. So Darwin showed that there are many similarities between mammals and humans. There are many similarities between the various species, from simple to complex. So the argument that we put in, Sadaputa and Michael Cremo, Judah Karma, is that you have an engineer, a designer, and he designed the engine. And then you see the engine, first he makes a motorbike, then later he makes a car, four-wheeler, then he makes a tank, then he makes like an airplane, finally he gets to a jet, and then finally he gets to a rocket that goes in outer space. Did they evolve from each other, or is there a common designer? That's our argument. Repudiate, and we generate an affrontal or argument against Darwin's theory of evolution by blind processes. The blind watchmaker, they say. Mother Nature is blind, and by chance or by luck, fortuity, we get different species. That's basically their idea. This comes from the argument. Isaac Newton, famous scientist, believed in God. So he made a kind of a clock with all the parts. And then his atheistic friend came into his house. And his atheistic friend said, "Oh, who made that beautiful clock?" It's a big clock with all the different parts moving, the hands going. And Isaac Newton said, "Oh, no, just I heard an explosion. And then I came in and all these parts came together." So Charles Darwin, he went on a boat, and the Beagle boat, and he went to Galapagos Islands, and he saw that the birds were isolated from the mainland and their beaks were different. So his proposal was, nature changes. Just like, humans in Africa, they're different from humans in Europe, So it seems like nature can change they can evolve a little bit. So he kind of took that and he expanded it out. It's called extrapolation.
Basically, he went from just observing that the different species, they adapt to their environment.
Yes.
To speculate that, all the different species are a result of that kind of adaptation, right? Which is...
Yeah, the example is you have a fish. The fish has a special kind of lungs. It takes oxygen out of the water.
Yeah.
Then slowly, the fins became little feet. And then it climbed on the land, but then somehow the lungs adapted and they were able to breathe oxygen. So that's a huge jump. So that's what they're saying.
Yeah, and also it will imply that the fish will stop existing, right? Because
and then gradually the fish will become obsolete or non-existent.
They don't.
They don't. No. So let's take a look at this example. You have a fish. The eyes have been designed to see perfectly in water. When you go underwater, you don't see perfectly. So one scientist, he believes in God. He spent 14 years studying, can the genes gradually change, the genetic codes change, because now they have to design a new eye, a new lung, different parts. So many body parts change. So they discovered in 1953, 1957, that is all based on the DNA, on the coding. The scientists just recently, about maybe like 15 years ago, he spent 14 years studying how possible is it to go, that all the genes have to change now by random. They have to change randomly in the space. The entire universe is a space of probabilities, right? Now the genes have to mutate and go towards something that's useful, like a new proteins, new lung proteins, and so on. So he did the study. So by computer analysis and by his bioengineering analysis, the odds against it, or the odds to get that, is one chance in 10 trillion, trillion, trillion. So one chance you
It's
get.
an incalculable number, practically speaking, right?
Yes. So no self-respecting scientist can accept this kind of probability.
In fact, we had some other devotee who was telling us that recently there was this discovery that showed that it was impossible.
Yeah. In science, they don't want to say impossible. There's always a chance, right? But a chance is laudable. And all the big computer scientists in like MIT, they have used their supercomputers for what is called the probability. And the probability is so small, they can't accept it. Even they don't believe in God.
Yeah.
But they said we cannot accept that.
MIT is Massachusetts.
Massachusetts Institute of Technology
Technology.
is the top, top in the world.
So the question will be then, if it's so obvious, that is something highly improbable, why still the theory, which is also a very obsolete theory, because also another point is about the cell now, that the cell, according to the time that Darwin was alive, and now it's changed
completely.
So why still is being taught in the schools? Why still is being accepted?
Atheism is a religion. It's a belief. It's a belief, a faith, and their faith is the driving force, the driving engine. Their faith in no God is the driving engine for whatever they want to speculate about. Just like their tiny Hiranyakashipus. Lord Brahma told Hiranyakashipu, "Oh, I can't make you immortal." He was afraid because his brother was killed by God. So now he's trying to carve out his own immortality. He just can't give up. So, don't kill me in the day, don't kill me in the night. Not by anything living, not by anything like this. So these atheistic scientists, it must have happened by natural causes. In the laboratory, they can make, say, a protein molecule or amino acid.
O un aminoácido.
Building block of a protein. Then from there, they just expand. Oh, look, we discovered. And then they go to the media, who knows nothing, and they just drive it up. They hype it up.
We
hype it up.
Created
Yeah,
life.
look, we found. They find a little thing, then they extrapolate, they hype it up and put it in the media. Oh, a new discovery, how life began.
But my question will be there, that an amino acid, is it life?
Amino acid is a molecule, right? It's a tiny part. It's just like you're building a house and now you need some bolts. Then the other question, do those bolts work? They took some chemicals in 1953, Miller-Urey experiment. They made some amino acids, but they weren't functional because these molecules, they have to be very specific to support a cell. It's almost like you're making a car. Oh, look, I made a wheel, but it's a bicycle wheel. Is it going to support the weight of a car? Same idea. Those amino acids are called, that they produced, a few, were called racemic. Racemic cannot support a protein in a cell. If they tell you any different, they're lying to you.
But why they call them amino acids? And they're not really amino acids.
They're amino acids, but they're not the function you need. They're not the function. They're very specific. In other words, when Krishna designs, it's extremely specific. They have to be what is called chiral. Chiral means handed. Like molecules in the cell, 90% are chiral, means they have a mirror image of one side is a mirror image of the other. You put your hand in front of a mirror, you see the right hand, you see a left hand. That's chiral. Chiral is a Greek word, means handed.
They only have been able to create this amino acid, not a protein, not a cell, right? Okay.
That was 70 years ago, 1953.
On the level of living things, no problem.
Not even close. They're actually every year, if this is the goalpost moving away because they discover more inside the cell.
More complex, right?
More complex, more difficult. So the goalpost is actually moving away.
So the goalpost is to create life, right? The goalpost.
Yes, the goal is how to make a living cell. Simple.
Yeah.
Give me a germ, amoeba, E. coli in their stomach, just one cell.
And that's one thing, for what I seen before, they explained that the knowledge that Darwin had of a cell, it was very, very limited to what the knowledge that we have today.
160 years ago, Darwin thought that a cell was a bag of plasma, just plasma, like Jello. And okay, so by the external environment, you got different cells full of plasma and they could do different functions. That was his idea. Now, we're talking biology here. This is only one of their problems. Now the cell is a factory. It's a factory. It's so complex. Yeah, you go inside a very advanced factory in the Western world or anywhere. Highly complex, so many machines have to work in coordination, so many parts, very specific, called fine-tuning. So the regular, normal people and students, they're just being fed this lie that we got life from some chemicals and some lightning called the primordial soup model.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the textbooks, even in the universities. Oh yeah, somehow, some under a rock, some soup, some big lake somewhere. So the chemists and the biologists who were top chemists, they know that this is a big problem, and they can't solve it, not within 100 years. Even their students and the students of their students will never solve this problem. How did life come about? But there's a very political force within the scientific community. And if you go public, you lose your tenure. Most research scientists require grants, so they have to toe the line of orthodoxy. Many scientists have put things in print for their peers, which contradicts their theory of evolution, and they suddenly find they lost their jobs.
So then who is, because it sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory, because it's, the whole world, you have like some, scientists in Nigeria and they are all conspiring with the scientists in the US.
Yes.
So how do we, it sounds a bit difficult to believe that that's the case.
All the scientists are under a strict hierarchy. So they're all on this bandwagon, like a wagon, that life had to come by unguided, unnatural, unguided forces. So most professors and scientists, they have to put out papers in their investigations. So one professor, once she was a geologist, they discovered in Mexico a Huayalaco site where they discovered modern artifacts like spears and cups, and they did some what is called dating program, uranium dating, fission tracking dating, some carbon dating, 4 kinds of dating on the strata and on the nature and quality of these artifacts that they found. So when they dig down, archaeologists dig down, there's different stratas. And it represents, 1 million years ago, 5 million, 10 million, like that. It's called stratigraphy. So this lady, in her innocence, she was expert. With her team, they did the dating tests with the various chemicals and so on. She came up with an age of 250,000 years. This would totally sink the boat of Darwin. It completely debunked the hierarchy or the different classes of human beings who lived in what we call the modern world. So the hominids, or the human beings, appeared in the new world, they say 50,000, maximum 100,000 years. So what happened was she put it on print and she sent it out to the various science magazines, very prominent magazines like Nature, like Science. She's honestly following what science is telling her based on her training and her instruments of investigation. She lost her job. Then the scientists, the American scientists who have the most authority and most power, they called the Mexican Geographical Society of Mexico. Ultimately, they shut the whole site down. And they built like a housing project on top of the site. There are also some archaeologists, or what we call paleontologists, in Argentina, in Chile. They discovered modern man very long time ago, like modern utensils. And they kept to the dates that they were trained to use, the instruments. They kept to those dates 300,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago. Those persons were completely pushed out of the scientific community. So one loses one's career, one loses one's future, and sometimes they're even scandalized in the newspapers, in the media. They're rejected from conventions and so on. They're banned from conventions.
But at the same time, I will play the devil's advocate, okay? There is some cases like this. How do we know that these people are actually telling the truth?
Well, first of all, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these findings now all over the world, where they're finding fossils, human remains that reflect a very ancient strata, but a very modern, what they call morphology. Like this is a Homo sapiens, this is a Homo erectus, but they found it 2 million years in what is called the Pliocene or the Miocene age. These are like millions of years ago. So they found this all over the world.
Okay, so they found like even millions of years ago, rest of human skeletons.
Yes. So what the scientific community does is they'll take these findings. A lot of times it's miners will find these things, and then they call the Geological Society. Like a mining company, they were mining coal in near Chicago, Illinois. And they come upon a big lump of coal. When they broke it, they found an ancient golden necklace. So immediately they called the Geological Survey, and they documented everything. How old is coal? It's like millions of years old.
I don't know. How old is carbon?
Carboniferous, 300 million years old. They've been finding many of these things. I have a list.
So we're not talking now of 200 and 300,000 years old. Talking about millions.
300 million Carboniferous age.
According to Darwin, it's 50,000 to 100,000, no?
In the modern, what we call the New World. So what the devotees have done, Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson, they've taken all documented evidence from natural museums of natural history around the world, and they've taken a microscope onto these findings, and they've documented. This is documented fossil findings.
These were in museums or where were these?
It's called Museum of Natural History. They have them all over the world. These are the big intellectual temples of the world. The Smithsonian in Washington, Royal Society of Natural History in London, England, Museum of Natural History in Stuttgart, Germany. All over the world, they have these monuments of atheism. It's a very powerful community of atheists.
Just so I get it clear. So these are monuments of atheism because they're trying to prove that that humans are only that old.
What they're doing is, what they show in these museums of natural history is supporting their religion. There's no God. And just simply by natural forces, natural selection on genetic mutation, it's very obvious that from primitive species, we got humans. If they do find fossil evidence that contradicts their picture of life, what they do is they filter it out. It's called knowledge filtration. They do keep the fossils, but they keep them in the back. The Karma and Sadhpur, they go to these museums of natural history, and they invoke the law of freedom of information. So they get the papers on who discovered it, which paleontologist discovered it, what he wrote about it. So these papers are highly official. And then they have other papers that might like contest. But those papers have to be accompanied. Holds to doubt, holds in the light of doubt some of the contests, some of the what they call polemics or arguments against those findings. So there's these papers, but basically they'll find these artifacts, various very ancient, like.
Entonces, they don't, for example, just going back to the example of that lady that you say in Mexico. Do their findings get recorded or they get thrown out?
They have to keep them in
They
print.
keep them.
They keep them in
And
print.
they keep within the contest.
And it's held in file.
Okay.
Everything's held in file. What they do is say, oh, you know, you made a mistake, or maybe they're what they call different layers. One layer may have somehow during the last big flooding caused one layer to go above another layer, is a wrong order layer. They have all these foolish speculation. So when we look at fossil records, that this book is about human origins. Now, when they've investigated all creatures, all what they call phyla. Phyla means basically categories of creatures with a vertebrate, creatures without a vertebrate, different categories. There's 4 different categories of phyla. So phyla means an animal
that could be connected somehow with the human race, right?
What they do is they'll dig down, say Cambrian age. Cambrian age, the Cambrian strata. Cambrian period is 540 million years ago. There was a sudden appearance of many different animal, and you can say body forms or body designs, animal forms, different types. Each one extremely distinct from the other one. Suddenly appeared in that period of rock. So then they were looking for, oh, there must be some ancestors in Precambrian. Precambrian is 600 million years ago. So they dug down into Precambrian period.
So just also for my clarification and everybody's clarification, these different Precambrian or the different stratus, this is called in terms of the depth in the earth, or how do you?
Yes, the depth. They'll go to a cliff, for example, and they'll see different types of, they'll have clay, sand, rock, and they'll
so you're talking of like kilometers down, or
it may be like 300 feet down, it may be 50 feet down, but they can identify with their dating mechanisms, their dating tools. Well, how old is this? Sometimes it's a kilometer down, like the coal mine. So when they looked at the Precambrian period, there was no fossil evidence of ancestors. They called them precursors. There was no intermediary precursors, none. So Darwin's tree of life, suddenly there's a big gap here. And right here at the tip, they're finding so many phyla, so many distinct, complete morphological forms. So then they had to call it the Cambrian explosion. It's famous. It's the abrupt appearance of many different animal forms, anatomically distinct from each other. You have jellyfish over here, trilobites over here, completely different bodies. Whales or fish. They kept investigating over the last 160 years, and they're finding that in various periods, rock periods, sudden abrupt appearance of various types of creatures. Like Eocene period, 55 million years ago, sudden appearance of mammalian body plans, like mammals. Then you have Devonian revolution, that flowering plants appeared suddenly 400 million years ago. They love the trilobite. It's a famous, it's like
trilobite.
Trilobite. It's a creature that looks like a crab, basically. And they found the many fossils, trilobite fossils, 535,000 million years ago. So they figured, okay, this trilobite, first of all, it's going to evolve into a more sophisticated creature. But that's not the case. They have crabfish in the ocean that has a history of Precambrian history of 2 billion years.
Hoy, nowadays,
And they're still finding these crabfish that
alive.
Looks like a trilobite.
Alive.
Yeah, they have exoskeletal form, like the skeletons on the outside, not the inside. Like a crab has a skeleton on the outside.
We see that some of those like creatures have survived 2 billion years.
Yeah.
But some of them haven't.
Right. Some species have disappeared in the fossil record. But Darwin's greatest fear was that there wouldn't be this tree of life shown in the fossil record from primitive, then there's intermediate, because his theory demands gradual change.
His greatest fear was basically?
There must be very gradual progression of, say, a creature with a light-sensitive cell. But by genetic mutation and natural selection, that creature would gradually develop very advanced, eye technology. So you'd have, in the fossil records, primitive, then it's gradual. And gradually, some creature would branch off and become a trilobite, which has very advanced eye technology. There was abrupt appearance of various species. I'll quote a few. Avian explosion, sudden appearance of birds 66 million years ago. No, what they call precursory intermediates. For example, the birds already had their full skeletons. Yeah. All their body parts already fully designed and created.
So when we see pictures of ancient creatures, or even the dinosaurs and all that,
right,
and they are no longer with us. How do we understand this? Because that will in one sense indicate that the natural selection is true, no?
Maybe. It could also mean that due to certain events, like there was a great flooding. They say that there was a glacial age, that the dinosaurs got wiped out by this glacial age. 100, 200 million years ago, the dinosaurs got wiped out by these glacial eruptions in the surface of the earth. That's their speculation. They claim this. So that's their speculations. And also certain creatures or species can become extinct. One of the most famous biologists, zoologists, evolutionary scientists, Ernst Mayr, he said that the most damning argument against evolution is the extreme persistence of very primitive creatures still in existence in the Pacific Ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean.
There is so much evidence, scientific evidence against evolution, and there is so many new scientists coming up. Is there any hope that at one point the narrative is going to change? Because, sometimes we hear about famous scientists that they were atheists their whole lives, and they were, like very adamant that there was no God, and then they have a change.
Yes.
I don't remember the names, but I know that very, very prominent atheists, they change to theists. So, and now that we live in a world with the internet, it's very hard to keep information hidden like before, no?
Yes.
So there is some hope that, or you think it's already changing? The narrative is changing? Is there any hope that the narrative is going to change? Because one thing also I would say that science doesn't mean atheism. There are many scientists that are not atheists, right?
A small percentage.
Small percentage.
Because there is this political strategy amongst the atheists that if you question us, you're heretic. You're sacrilegious, basically. Once they're in this, they have a scientific career, and they're in the process of studying biology and promoting this idea there's no God. Once they're inside that prison, if they question it, they get kicked out. They get ostracized.
Exactly.
Isaac Newton, yeah.
He was a believer.
Sure, most of the scientists in those times, Boyle, Newton, there's a few others that I can't remember the names.
Even Darwin was a believer or no?
No, he was atheist. His wife was a believer in God, and he was completely atheist. He said, I can't accept. So he was the pinup boy, the carrier of the torch of of atheism, which there was a response against Christianity. The intellectuals had been there had been inquisition, like Galileo, Copernicus.
Yeah.
They were persecuted. So this was kind of a reaction against Christianity, that the intellectuals said, okay, there's no God. The new scientists, the new atheists have so much power in terms of the governments. In America, you're not allowed to question evolution. You're not allowed to introduce creationism. So this is the problem. There's a huge bias, and it's political, it's governmental. There's been a campaign to at least introduce the possibility of God's existence into the curriculum. And there was a court case. It was staged, I think, in Arkansas, somewhere in the south of the U.S. And the judge, he rejected the proposal that at least consider the idea there could be a supernatural power behind the universe, and it was lost in court. The problem is they've misinterpreted the word secular government. They've changed it. They say secular, but what it really means is atheistic. Secular means neutral. We're not being dictated by any scripture, but at the same time, we should be open to other paradigms. But no, it means secular for them now has been interpreted in the terms of legal atheism. This is the problem being faced. But certain scholars, some scientific scholars, very, very popular guys, have put out books like Darwin's Doubt, Signature in the Cell. Many, few books have been put out. And so because we have the internet, social media, we have things being popularized, different perspectives, have become, some of these books have become best-selling, New York Times.
These books present the idea of a creator, right?
Oh, they completely dismantle Darwin's theory of evolution, neo-Darwinism. They're all being dismantled. I mean, it's just follow the science. The science is exposing Darwin's theory is completely falsified. But of course, there's the atheistic who are also on the social media, and they retaliate with such hostility and hate. It's like Haranekashipus. And there's pure speculation, but they usually get more hits on YouTube than the guys who are actually exposing this huge lie of evolution. Is such a huge lie. They know it. Any biologist, zoologist, evolutionist, they know how flawed and deficits, how many deficits in the theory of evolution. Because now they have these supercomputers. And they say, okay, we have a universe with so many events. We have a universe with so many particles. They figure it out. And then the computer calculates what's the probability you could get evolution based on what we know in terms of DNA and all this. And the probability is so tiny that they came together at in 2016 in England. All the top scientists, all the top evolutionists, they all came together 2016 in London. And the most respected evolutionist, Gab Miller, and he's from Switzerland, he presented a paper, and he said, we have to reevaluate the theory of Darwin. He said there are too many deficits in this theory. You have to come up with a better explanation for evolution. So with all the discoveries, they know it's a big lie. It's like you question someone's religion, they can kill you. It becomes it's the most fundamental, emotional, it's subjective thing you have. It's your core. It's like your core reality, my belief. So their core reality is no God. Jai, all goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Kripanidhi Prabhu, thank you so much. Very fascinating topic. I certainly go much clearer about how the evolution theory is, like you say, it's full of deficit.
Being debunked.
It's being debunked. And it'll be wonderful to explore the topic further, because of course, once we understand that is, is not a real theory, then there are so many implications, and we didn't touch on that. But that's, that will mean so many things, right?
Yeah, they did a study on the decline of morality in America, and they found on investigating teenage murders, mass murders by teenagers.
In U.S.?
In the U.S., the FBI investigated what is their manifesto. So they studied manifesto of some of these kids to start thinking about, life is, what is life, and they go and they kill, they go into schools. It's been a big problem in America. Yeah, so they FBI investigated these two boys a few years ago, and they went into the school and they murdered their peers and the teachers. And then they found their manifesto on their computer. And their manifesto was, we're just molecular machines. Life has no meaning. And we're just pitted against each other in the process of survival of the fittest. So we're just, we're the fittest and we're just taking out the weak. That was their manifesto. So Darwinism has infiltrated into sociology, politics. There's no foundation for morality or ethics. There's no compassion. There's no humanities, basically. Yeah, it's devoid of humanities because we're just products of matter. Hare Krishna. Thank you.